We're dipping into a couple of extra delicious wings on the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. It's the top 10 NHL fantasy right wingers that you need to own in upcoming drafts. Happy Thursday, everybody. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Is it October yet? Because on this episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, we continue our draft preparation for the upcoming NHL season. Shout out to the everydayers. Salute, thank you, and much love. Holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. I don't know about you, Steele, but right now I'm feeling extra grateful for all the love, support, attention for the Listener League. Shout out to everybody in the DMs. It means the world to both Steele and I, all the feedback. We do this show for you guys. Of course, we'd like to make a little bit of money as well, but we're trying to put money in your pocketbooks, and that's what we're going to do on today's episode, which is sponsored by our friends at Gametime. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Over to you, Mr. Rodin. We get you guys in and out in 30 minutes. That's what this show is all about. Our lives are busy. I think you and I both know this better than most right now, Steele. However, it's about 30 minutes, education, entertainment, and, of course, a lot of fantasy takes. Top 10 right wingers. The top 5 of this list almost set in stone.
Yeah.
The bottom 5, a lot could be said about some of these names. So over to you, my friend. Who are you looking at, and how are you looking at it?
Look, this was a tough list to put together. Like you said, top 5 are pretty much set in stone, but there's a lot of guys that I really, really like for this upcoming season that I had to leave outside the top 10, and I'll mention them in a second as honorable mentions. But first, the way Flip and I were looking at this top 10 list for right wingers was, where are they projected to start at the beginning of the season? So a lot of these players are going to have dual eligibility. When you look at Yahoo, when you look at ESPN, they could be both a center and right wing, or a left wing, right wing position in this upcoming season. But where are they projected to start with their team? And do they have that dual eligibility? So there are going to be a couple of guys who have dual eligibility, left wing, right wing, but they're projected to start on the left wing side. So we'll get to them.
Right wing side.
No, we'll get to those left wingers
yes,
when we get to the top 10 left wingers.
Hey,
but we left them off for a reason, because that's not where they're projected to be. And let me get straight to it. A guy who is dual eligibility in most leagues. And I'm starting at number 10 with Sam Reinhart. He has to be in the top 10. I know it says when you look at Hockey Reference, when you look at his when you look at his account or his profile on most websites, it says centerman. He's projected to start as a right winger. He does have that dual eligibility for center and right wing position. So you've got to go with Sam Reinhart at least in the top 10, but he comes in at 10 for me. Monster of a season this last year with the Florida Panthers. Career high 57 goals, career high 94 points, career high plus 29, career high. This guy set the bar of a season for Sam Reinhart and, of course, the Florida Panthers. I think when we look at what the Florida Panthers did, winning the Stanley Cup, a lot of mileage on their bodies, a lot of injuries they dealt with. Obviously, like I said, career high for Sam Reinhart. There's going to be a slight regression. He has never before had over 40 goals in a season. I see back to 35, maybe 40 goals for Sam Reinhart this next year. I put him in that 80 to 85 point realm. He's still going to be a very good player. Maybe a little bit less than 80 points is what I think you're looking at. Maybe 75 points for Sam Reinhart. But again, he's going to get the shot volume, over 220 plus shots for this lad over here. But when you look at his shooting percentage of 24.5, that's too high for Sam Reinhart. There's going to be a slight regression on the offensive production side of things. I think I view him the same way you viewed Chris Kreider 2 years ago when he was coming off that 52 goal season. So I see that same as him, but he still has to be in the top 10.
I agree, and thank you for bringing up that angle. And one of the hardest things to do in fantasy hockey, fantasy sports, is pegging a player the year before who was an absolute stud. And if you were a GM who had Sam Reinhart, he was probably a big reason why you won your league if you did have a team and you had Sam Reinhart, because you probably were able to get him at a very, very good round. So in fantasy sports in general, very hard to predict guys coming off great seasons that will regress. That might be the hardest angle to cover and predict in what we do, Steele. And you nailed it. And here we go with both of our lists off to a very good start. Look, I'm not trying to come on here and disrespect the guy who led the league in the NHL last year, 27 power play goals. He's not going to score that many power play goals this season, Steele. And we don't even need to get into it. Also, if there wasn't a target on this Florida team before, there is definitely a bullseye on their back. They are going to get the absolute best out of every single team in the NHL. If they weren't before, now that you're the Cup champions, even the San Jose Sharks, if they play them, which I don't think they do, want to bring it. So that's not a fantasy tangible, but it's something that you have to consider. Look, Brandon Montour not there, Tarasenko not there. They're bringing back mostly the same team, but they have a little bit of chinks in the armor. I'm a little bit wary of these Florida Panthers, to be honest, Steele. They're going to be knocking on the door for the best team in the Atlantic. Do I think they can run it back? I do not. However, Sam Reinhart also in that category of difficult to run it back. He comes in at 10 for me. And if you're good, I'm going to talk about Matt Barzal. And this was tough for me because I think Matt Barzal has actually been a bit of a polarizing fantasy piece, considering how much he came into the league like a house of fire. 85 points in his first full NHL season, winning the Calder Trophy. Follows it up with a pretty solid 62 points as a 21-year-old. Yeah, that's a dip. But then he hasn't been able to really find it until last year. 80 points, 240 shots. This is a player to me that I am very high on, Steele, and I understand if you don't have him on your list, and that's okay. I just love him alongside Bo Horvat. He's one of the best skaters in the league, and I think, given the market he plays in, he doesn't get nearly enough credit, especially after a really good season in which he set highs in shots and goals. I really love Matt Barzal, natural centerman, and I understand the dual eligibility. He's going to be playing on Bo Horvat? I got it now. Wing, and Anthony DeClaire's now up there. I'm really liking Matthew Barzal headed into this season, despite the Islanders not really having a ton of scoring punch after that top line. Mute's got you, brother.
Mute button once again. But look, I like this player a lot too. And I like him alongside Bo Horvat on that top line. And he hasn't really had a lot of, like you said, offensive 1-2 punch combos to work with over the span of his career, even though he is one of those superstar players that doesn't get the recognition that he definitely deserves. Again, because of the market he plays in, boring hockey team to watch, understandably so. Yes. I get it. I left him off the top 10 list for that reason as well. There's not enough offensive punch with this Islanders team. This is a very bad power play team as well. It's a bad penalty kill unit as well. Bad. So lots of things that go into why I left Matt Barzal off the top 10 list, but I wanted to have him in there. I really did want to have him in there. Just before we get to break, I do want to mention honorable mentions, guys that I really wanted in the top 10, but I couldn't find room for them. Sure. Travis Konechny, I need to mention him as well.
Yes.
Honorable mention.
For sure.
Jonathan Marchessault, again, Nashville Predators. I love the power punch that they've got cooking up in Nashville. Yep. Got to mention him. And your boy, Seth Jarvis. I know he's
got to mention him.
Got to mention Seth Jarvis. Dual eligibility as well. He's going to be playing on that top line with Sebastian Aho.
We hope.
And Andrei Svechnikov. We hope. He should be at least. But I honorable mentions for sure. Had to mention them because of the elite star power that these guys bring to the table, playing in the top 6 group for their organization. So I'll mention them, and then I'll get to my number 9 player after the break.
Love that. Seth Jarvis, though, considering how thin Carolina is up the middle, you even mentioned you being concerned about Kotkaniemi having to fill that second-line center role.
Tough.
If it doesn't work out, Seth Jarvis is a very capable centerman who has played the position before. So he needs to be attached to Sebastian Aho for all of my takes on the elite level production. Still a sensational player. But for fantasy, he needs to be playing with Sebastian Aho on that top line for all of the things that I said to come true. Steele, on the deeper end of things, I got Matt Boldy on this list. I think he's close to breakout territory. I know. Honorable mention. Matt Boldy's got to be considered there. Brock Besser, I think, deserves to be in the mix after blowing the doors off the league and the postseason. Honorable mention, doesn't make the top 10, but he makes that list for the peripheral guys who are almost there. We're going to talk about the rest of our top 10 through 6 fantasy right wingers, and of course 5 through 1 on tomorrow's episode. Next week we'll be back for left wingers and centermen and a whole lot more of fantasy draft prep season. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Indeed. You need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data. A matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. One of the things that I love about Indeed, Steele, it helped me find my job. So on either side of the things, Indeed is what you need. Listeners of the show right now get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Support the show by saying you heard about it on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure for your second listen, you go enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Flip, continuing the conversation of our top 10 right wingers for this upcoming season. You just spoke about your number 9 guy. Number 9 for me is Jesper Bratt from the New Jersey Devils. He is the number 9 guy I'm looking at right now. Maybe could be a little bit higher on this list, but I like some guys just above him right now. But when you get to play with Jack Hughes, and I know I've given Jack Hughes a lot of slander over the last couple of years. I'm not giving it. Hey, look, I'm not going to disrespect Jack Hughes. I've always said it. He is a superstar in this league. He just can't stay healthy. But regardless of that, Jesper Bratt gets to play with Jack Hughes on that top line. And even when Jack Hughes wasn't in the lineup, Bratt actually took over offensively for this New Jersey team. So he can do it with and without him. He's been super durable over the last 2 seasons, hasn't missed a game. 3 straight his first 4 seasons in the NHL, 30-plus points. Anywhere from 30 to 35. His last 3 seasons, 73 points, 73 points, 83 points. He's proving to us that he is a legit star in the NHL right now. He, again, like I said, gets to play with some really good players, but he himself is also a very good player in the National Hockey League. 248 shots, 66 hits, 33 blocks, 10.9 shooting percentage for the lad. So he's more of a playmaker. That's where you're going to get a lot of his production is in the assist power play category. But he's such a strong right winger. You got to mention it. He's smart as well with the puck. Really good decision making from Jesper Bratt out there in the offensive zone. So I like him at number 9 for me. Maybe he's higher on the list for other people out there, but I think 9 is a really good spot for Bratt.
There's a couple of angles playing into Jesper Bratt here for me, which is nicely. You teed it up for me. I have him at 8. Thank you for mentioning how smart he is on the ice. There are not many players that I think make up for a lack of overall size with just straight up knowing where to be and how to play the game. And to me, now when you throw that in with Jack Hughes, the additions that this team made and what they were already, 2 seasons ago, going on a pretty solid playoff run, this is a dangerous team, Steele. Nemec, Luke Hughes, Dougie Hamilton, Siegenthaler. I know that Siegenthaler was a bit of an outlier there with the fantasy side of things. They're just a very balanced team. Now they have a really good tandem. Allen, Markstrom. They are built to win. And Jesper Bratt, along with Jack Hughes, and if he gets a piece of Meyer, I don't even really care who's on the left side, or if it ends up being, because Bratt can really play a little bit of everywhere. So however he is deployed in the top 6, which right now it makes sense with Hughes, I love this guy. At 5'10", he makes up for the lack of size with his offensive production and his hockey sense. 7 game-winning goals as well last year, Steele, in only 19 minutes of ice time. I'd like to see him getting, I know it's only for a forward, the fact that he did get 19 minutes of ice time for this team last year also, I think, indicates his quality. Sheldon Keefe loves to stack the deck. He likes to put all of his best players together, which makes sense for even more production perhaps from Jesper Bratt. What also I wanted to throw out about this player, Steele, this was a 6th round draft pick. 6th round, 162nd overall. A lot to love about this player on and off the ice. I really like him a lot. He comes in at number 8 for me. Who are you looking at number 8?
Number 8, I'm buying into Wyatt Johnston. And look, this might be a little bit of a reach on Johnston, but I'm really liking the look of what
I
he's
don't
done
think
so
so.
far.
I like it.
I think people might think it's a reach just because of how young he is. He's still 21 years old. He's only been in the NHL for 2 seasons, but rookie year, 41 points. Backs it up with a 65-point season. He hasn't missed a single game in his career. He's smart. He doesn't put himself in dangerous areas of where he's going to get injured or again, he's very smart on the ice. He's got a wicked of a shot for a 21-year-old. And when you look at what he did in the postseason as well, 10 goals, 16 points in 19 games, very close to getting to the Stanley Cup Finals. And again, he's been so clutch for this team. So many game-winning goals. 3 game-winning goals in the regular season. I'm pulling up. He had 2 really crucial game-winning goals this last year and the year prior to that in the playoffs. Very smart player. I think the one thing is that the Dallas Stars are going to miss is having Joe Pavelski as a net front presence on the power play at just 5-on-5 overall because he's got great hand-eye coordination. I think Wyatt Johnston is going to fill in that right wing top line position very, very well, alongside Rupe Hintz and Jason Robertson. So that's going to be one of the deadlier trio lines in the National Hockey League coming up this season.
Yes, sir.
So I do expect a lot of goals for this Dallas Stars team. Again, coming from that top line, mostly Johnston, Rupe Hintz, and Robertson. So for me, he comes in at number 8.
We're flowing together like butter, baby. And I got Wyatt Johnston at 7. And I just got to give a tip of the cap and a shout out to our boy Michael Amato at Sportsnet. He did his top 200, 250 or something like that fantasy pieces from the number 1 spot all the way down. And his breakdown about Wyatt Johnston said this, and I think it holds the most true. And I can't come on here and say it after the man put it in writing first, but he is on point. Wyatt Johnston is not going to slide through the cracks this season. He did last year. If you want this guy, you're going to have to invest in him. And that means perhaps reaching on him, Steele, because I do think he's that good. So when you say reach, that means take him at a too early of a round. I don't know what's too early for a guy at this age who has already proven to have one of the most important pieces as an NHLer, and that's the ability to perform when your team needs it most. And there isn't a category in fantasy for that, but if you're able to do that, that means you are also going to put up points in a big, big way. I wrote this earlier this week myself. I think 40-plus goals is very in the realm for Wyatt Johnston. 32 last year at only 21 years old. Shout out to a good Toronto boy as well, Steele. You can't help but feel. We talked about Lafreniere. We talked about a couple of other quote-unquote breakouts. Maybe it's tough for a guy like Johnson at 65 points last year to break out. But my goodness me, he has got to be one of the hottest names in fantasy headed into this upcoming draft. And the point that you made, I think, holds the most true. He's playing with Rupe Hintz and Jason Robertson. That trio is going to give opposing defenders nightmares. They're going to be losing sleep over those 3 guys, Steele. Also, 216 shots on net, just scratching the surface. 32 goals, 65 points, feels like also just scratching the surface. If you want him, you're going to have to probably reach, but I'd probably be okay with it given what I think is going to come for the Stars and Wyatt Johnston. Still, you know how I feel about this Dallas Stars team. Don't get me going on Thomas Harley because I'll get going. But Wyatt Johnston, he comes in at number 7 for me. I love that you have him at 8. With him probably replacing Pavelski, he's got to be a top 10 right winger headed into this season.
And he is for us. He makes the top 10 list. We're going to continue the top 10 list after the break. And of course, stay tuned for Friday's episode where we break down the top 5 right wingers, as well as we break down the format, the rules, and everything you need to know for our Fantasy Hockey Listener League coming up in the 2024-25 season. All of that and more coming up next. This episode is also brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when buying your tickets to the next big event. That's why Flip and I always use the Gametime app. Gametime is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Gametime has a new feature actually called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us. Monday through Friday is when you can find all of our episodes, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. So thank you so much for all of that love. Getting back to the top 10 through 6 anyway, fantasy right wingers for this upcoming season. At number 7, again, dual eligibility. He's listed as a left winger. Adrien Kempe comes in at number 7 for me. You've really sold me on this guy. I liked him before, but I bought even more into Adrien Kempe. Banger league beauty is how I'm describing this player as now. 72 penalty minutes, 112 hits. That's 3 straight seasons of 100-plus hits for Kempe. 32 blocks. Yeah, it just adds on to the charm a little bit, but 3 straight seasons as well of over 240 shots on net. Career high 75 points in 77 games this past year. I think he can get back to 35, maybe even 40 goals this next season, playing in the top 6 group of the Los Angeles Kings. I like this player a lot. He's physical. He brings the boom. Like I said, banger league beauty. He's got a wicket of a shot down the right side or down the left side, whichever wing he's playing on. And you've really sold me on this guy over the last couple of years, so I had to put him in my top 10, so he comes in at number 7.
There were 2 things, aside from his fantasy value, that jump off the page for me, Steele. He's got sneaky speed, and he has a really, really good shot. So the fact that he likes to also mix it up, he can score on the penalty kill as well. I know that he is deployed. I'm going to bring it up. I know he's deployed on the penalty kill for the LA Kings. I just want to make sure what unit it is. He is on the top penalty kill unit as well. So I'm not saying that I draft players because they're on the penalty kill, but that's just even more opportunity for a guy in Kempe who loves to mix it up. You mentioned the penalty minutes, 72 penalty minutes, a career high, 246 shots, only 4 off a career highs in points. 28 goals is at the bottom of the barrel of what I expect for this guy. And Ons Kopitar, I love him playing with Ons Kopitar. They clearly have a lot of chemistry. They've played with each other. At some point, I do expect it's going to be Quinton Byfield and Kempe, and I love that even more for offensive upside. That's when that number for goals, Steele, if it's Quinton Byfield creating with his size and speed and feeding Kempe the puck. I know I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit because Ons Kopitar ain't going anywhere off that number 1 center spot for now. You know how much I like this player. He comes in at number 6 for me. So you've teed me up nicely this whole episode, which is very, very much appreciated, my friend. Adrien Kempe needs to have more respect put on his name. And along with the Seth Jarvises and a whole bunch of others, I don't want to bring up Cole Perfetti because he's a bit dead to me right now. But some of these players that that I've really liked, Thomas Harley, Wyatt Johnston, and who have you? Adrien Kempe is definitely in that bucket as a shooter and as, let me just throw this out, the LA Kings struggled a little bit at times to do what they usually do best, and that's score goals over the last few years. 16th in the NHL in overall goals for. However, right there as a top 10 power play team. So right there knocking on the door with the Canucks and the Devils as one of the top 10 units in the league. I like Kempe so much that with the peripheral steal, perhaps based on your format of your league, he could maybe even be a spot higher, just given how good the top 5 is for both of us. I just don't think he cracks it. However, he is a player that I love having on my team. I just don't know what happens with this LA Kings this year. So we'll see what happens.
Well, now I'm a little intrigued and confused about who's in your top five because my top five has
Mm.
the guys who I thought were set in stone, but now I'm a
No, it's set
little
in stone. I'll
lost.
take it back. I take it back. Kempe can't go ahead of the top 5, but I like him at 6. Let me just retract and play it safe.
No, fair enough. But I'm looking at my top five right now, and I'm wondering who do you have in there, or who don't you have in there? Because
Oh.
I'm a little confused right now. At number 6, I have Zach Hyman. He comes
Mm.
in as the 6th best right winger this upcoming season. Again, 77 points, close to a career high, but he's done it back-to-back seasons now. 83 points the year prior, 77 points this last year, 54 goals. I think I put him in the same vein as how I'm looking at Sam Reinhart, though. But Zach Hyman gets to play with Connor McDavid. Zach Hyman gets to play with Leon Draisaitl. They also have one of the best power plays in the National Hockey League, if not the best. So Zach Hyman comes in at number 6 for me. He's going to continue to get his points offensively. He's going to be a great plus-minus player. He was a plus 36 this past year. Career high 290 shots. All he does is bang away in the blue paint. Bang away, bang away. That's all he does. You look at the 50-plus goals that he scored this year, I think only 5 of them came outside of that blue paint area. So
shout out to Coach Chippy.
Yeah, shout out to Coach Chippy. You put him in front of the net, and he's going to he's going to be a dog for you. He's going to battle, he's going to grind, and he's going to do all those dirty little things that you need those players to do. 87 hits, 37 blocks. Like I said, career high, or second best career high, 18.6% shooting percentage. I see that taking a little bit of a dip down. I do see him regressing down to potentially 40, 45 goals this next season. Again, he's playing with the best playmaker in the game right now, Connor McDavid. So he's going to continue to be an offensive juggernaut, offensive on the power play as well. So he comes in at number 6. That's why I'm confused who comes in your top 5 right now.
Well, here we go, Steele. Maybe Men's had a few too many wobbly pops while putting this list together, and maybe Matt Barzal should have slid off of it. And I honestly completely forgot about Zach Hyman. So this doesn't happen No. This doesn't happen to me very much because, look, I don't want to give away my top 5 list.
Yeah.
Because I love my top 5 list. Zach Hyman for sure deserves to be right where you have him. So I'm not going to chirp at all. I rarely come on here, and now I'm getting a little red in the face. But hey, we come on here and we're honest. Zach Hyman has been one of those pieces for the Edmonton Oilers that they got him at such a good deal that basically whatever production he did, it was going to be good. And he has taken it to a whole other level and added another wrinkle into this team that was already hard to deal with. That's even harder to deal with. So thank you for this. Is why we do this together, my friend, my brother. And that's why we're in the top 10 of Canada in fantasy hockey, because you backed me up. And honestly, I just fully doing this because, look, there are a few different ways we could have looked at this list. Naturally, right wingers, dual eligibility, what they're projected to be. And straight up, he just got lost in the shuffle. And he should be, though, honestly. And I think, though, because I know you and I were talking about that article that I wrote on Dauber Hockey. I think I had Hyman in at 5 or 6.
You did, yeah.
So he deserves to be there. And he led the NHL in postseason scoring last year. He's got to be in the middle of the top 10 right wingers list. So thank you for holding me down. I hope that I don't make any more glaring omissions on tomorrow's episode. However, I hope y'all tune in to make sure that I don't have a little bit more egg on me face. Either way, we got a lot more fantasy draft prep coming your way.
Don't worry, my guy. We are back on track. I knew there must have been some
My bad.
mistake, but no.
I didn't even throw him in honorable mentions. You were like, Flip, what's going on?
Yeah, I was like, this guy has to be in his top 5 then. He must
My
be.
bad.
But then who's he going to take out? Anyways, that's the top 10 fantasy hockey right wingers, 10 through 6 for both Flip and I. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Once again, from both Flip and I, we wish you good luck this fall with all of your bets. NFL coming up this weekend, NHL right around the corner. And we shall see you back here again for tomorrow's episode.
Peace.